This episode is completely dedicated to our weekly challenge, and while the last challenge may have been the most controversial, this week's will likely be the most difficult to implement. And to some, it may actually be more controversial than the last. My name is Luke Clayton, and this is Connection Culture. Well, as we start this episode, I want to go ahead and remind you to be sure to subscribe or follow wherever you're consuming this content. If you're watching, we're available on YouTube or Facebook. And of course, if you're listening, we're on pretty much every podcast platform out there. Now, if you are watching this on Facebook or YouTube, and you're normally the kind of person who doesn't typically share, well, I'm actually going to really ask you to consider sharing it this time on this particular episode, because the almighty algorithms of Facebook, YouTube, and the interwebs, they're really not going to like what I have to say in this episode. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if, it gets suppressed by the algorithms and all that stuff. But we can overcome that in a way by liking and sharing this content. So please consider taking a moment to share, and that will help the word get out and this episode actually get seen by others. Now, if you don't watch, or if you do rather watch on Facebook and you want to bypass that algorithm to make sure you don't miss an episode, you can actually get each week's episode delivered to you by way of email. All you got to do is go to mustincrease.com/cc to sign up. That's mustincrease.com/cc. Or you can see the link in the description for this episode, and you can go and sign up for our weekly emails where we simply just let you know whenever we have new episodes. Now, I really have nothing to report this week in terms of big news from movies or tech or anything. I just haven't seen any new movies and haven't really heard any news per se. However, I do have tickets to see a new movie this week. So come back in the next episode to hear my review on this particular movie and to find out what movie it actually is. Now, this is going to be the hardest challenge yet, and I actually fully anticipate some pushback, some resistance to this challenge. However, I think it's really important. Before we get to it, let's recap. Let's kind of review the challenges we've given over the past few weeks. The first had to do with reducing and eliminating notifications. And this is really simple to do in that all it requires is you opening up the settings on your phone, going to the notification section, and just turning off any and all notifications that you don't want to be distracted by. And I hope that you have at least done this in some capacity by this point. The next challenge was to activate restrictions for adult content and screen time. Again, I'm using terms very specific to iPhone and iPad. However, this is something that you can do and should do regardless of what device you have. I know you might be thinking, well, isn't that for kids? Well, the truth is we all can be tempted to look at things, do things that we shouldn't on our devices, and screen time can really, really creep up and take a lot of your time if you're not careful. By setting those restrictions, you are able to reduce the time on your phone and protect yourself in the event that you ever could potentially be exposed to some harmful, inappropriate content. In last week's episode, we really just emphasized how we need to prioritize living in the moment over capturing the moment. There's nothing wrong with taking pictures and videos, and the phones are wonderful tools for that. However, we talked about how the hierarchy's kind of been flipped, how now it seems like we are trying to make moments just so we have something to share on social media, when really it should be the other way around. We're sharing things on social media because we happen to make a truly wonderful, authentic moment and memory that we happen to want to share with those that we care about. So we want to prioritize living in the moment over capturing the moment. Now, this new challenge, when it's all said and done, is really going to be more practical than maybe philosophical. However, we have to dive into some of the mindset and philosophy behind it. It's going to take that first challenge about notifications to a whole new level. So here it is. I want you to go beyond just turning off notifications and actually delete the distracting apps from your phone. I'm talking about social media, email, streaming apps, news apps. Now, look, let's be clear. I'm not calling for you to completely delete or deactivate your social media accounts or your streaming accounts. I mean, with streaming accounts in particular, you might be able to save yourself some money by maybe deactivating a few of them. Obviously, there's a cost associated with that, but that's not what this is about. And if you know anything about this, about me and the content of our show at all, you know that we are actually not trying to promote. I'm not trying to get, or my mission rather, I should say, is not to eradicate all social media and technology from society. No, not at all. So I'm not asking you to completely delete or deactivate your accounts. What I'm talking about is deleting the app specifically from your phone. Now, for those of you who are losing your minds right now and coming up with reasons of why you couldn't possibly do this, will allow me to spend some time refuting every objection or question that you might have. So you might say, well, okay, how will I check social media? You know, you're saying don't delete the accounts. Well, how in the world am I supposed to check my social media or read the news if I don't have the app? Well, here is the thing that we often forget, and that's that you can access these apps through your phone's browser. And you say, well, what's the difference? The difference is, and you'll see it, is that when you don't have a dedicated app on your phone for the viewing and consuming of social media in particular, you are going to spend less time looking it up. However, at any time, you could go to the web browser and you could open it up and you could still be able to browse and view the content there. It may seem like a very small difference, but this small little shift actually makes a huge difference in the amount of time you spend on social media. Another way that you can consume it is if you're using an iPad or a tablet. Just to be clear, I'm actually not saying to delete these apps from your iPad. Now, if you want to, go for it, but this challenge is actually very specific to your phone, your mobile device, the one that fits in your pocket, not to an iPad. And here's why. If you do have an iPad, you probably realize by now that you actually don't carry this everywhere with you, whereas your phone is always in your pocket. I'll be the first to admit that I carry my phone with me everywhere. I don't go anywhere without it. And we are all like that nowadays because for most of us, that's our primary way of contact. We don't even have home phones anymore. We just have cell phones. And so I'm not saying to delete it from your iPads. I'm saying to delete it from your phones because this way, your most accessible device is clear of distracting apps. And so you can still access these apps and this content from your iPad or some other type of tablet. And you can also access it from a good old-fashioned computer, a desktop or a laptop. So if you're like, well, how am I going to check your social media? Here's the truth. Facebook and Twitter in particular, these apps existed really before the smartphone era. They were originally designed to be used on a computer. And now things are different. Now things have changed, and these apps have changed their approach to target specifically the mobile audience, but they're still very capable of being used from a computer. And so all that to say, if you're having doubts, well, how will I check it? It's still possible. You can use your computer, a tablet, or even the browser right there on your phone. All of that, in case of this challenge, is completely acceptable. So your next question is, well, how will I watch my shows and my movies? You talked about the streaming apps. How am I going to watch Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu? Well, you likely have at least one of these in addition to your smartphone. You likely have a smart TV, an Apple TV, a Roku, something like that, or you do have some type of an iPad or a tablet or a laptop. All of these are completely reasonable ways for you to access your streaming content without actually doing it on your phone. And here's what I like in particular about using a smart TV or watching it on the TV. I mean, it kind of, if you will, rewinds us a little bit to 10, 20 years ago, when this is how we primarily consumed content. And while I'm definitely not a proponent of spending hours and hours in front of any type of TV shows or movie content, I do like the idea that when you watch it on your bigger screen there in your living room, that first of all, there's more accountability there. If you're not alone, and if your family is there to see what you're watching, keeps you a little bit honest. But secondly, it also encourages your family to maybe enjoy these shows and movies together. Again, there's a fine line, and in the future we will talk about limiting your time of actually watching and consuming content. But there is nothing wrong with getting together with your family and watching a movie, or sitting down with your spouse and watching a couple episodes of a show you both like. That's what I love about using the smart TV approach for consuming your streaming content. Now, here's the thing. I do understand that there's times where maybe you're traveling, in particular, and so maybe then you could make an exception and you could download, an app, a streaming app, download Netflix or Hulu or whatever it is back to your phone so that you can watch this content while you're traveling. However, when you get back from your trip, just delete it again. In other words, make these apps living on your phone the exception, not the rule. So then you might be wondering, well, and for particularly you business people out there, you professionals, or like myself, maybe you're an entrepreneur, how am I going to check my email? Well, really see my answers to the last two objections. Use your computer or your tablet. Now, I really have an issue here with, and I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox, a rant, whatever you want to call it here. I really have an issue with modern society, and particularly the business world's approach to email. Email for some has become an instantaneous form of communication. Because we can get it on our mobile devices, we make it synonymous with something like a text message that implies maybe a little bit more of time-sensitive content. And I will just tell you, to make a long story short, with a personal story and illustration, I used to be absolutely completely dictated by my email inbox. I would, as soon as I got an email, I would reply instantly. I would let it distract me from anything I was doing. And just from a pure business professional productivity standpoint, it was very, very harmful, but it was also not healthy for my personal life either, because it really allowed work to continue to infiltrate my personal life and my family time. So here's the thing about email. If anyone expects an instantaneous response to your email, then this person has unreasonable expectations. And if you are the person with those expectations, you need to check yourself. Email was never intended to be an instantaneous thing. When the early days of email, it would not be uncommon for someone to go days or even weeks without replying or acting on an email. Now, I understand, especially in certain businesses, there is a sense of you have to be responsive. You can't just ignore. I'm not talking about being irresponsible. I am talking, though, about actually managing your email appropriately and not letting it rule your life. The best tip I can give on email is to deem 1 to 3 times a day where you process, you check your email, you do your replies, and that's it. Don't live in your email. Don't keep it open all the time on your computer even, and definitely delete it from your phone. And so I understand this is difficult. I really do. I understand all of this is difficult. And trust me, I like I said, I struggle with this, and I'm not issuing any challenges that I haven't already done myself. So I already, years ago, it was probably about 2 years ago, I got rid of social media on my phone. I got rid of email on my phone. And yes, there are emergencies, if you will, or urgent situations where, I might need to, all I have on me is my phone and I need to refer to an email. Well, again, I go back to your phone has a browser, and you can use the browser to access most email. Most people are using Gmail or Outlook or something like that, and all of this works directly in the browser on your phone. And so all that to say, you don't need email on your phone. Whether it's Gmail, the Gmail app, the Outlook app, the built-in mail app, which now on iPhone you can actually delete. Get rid of it. You don't need email on your phone. You said, okay, so, all right, we can check social media in the browser. Okay, I get that. But how am I going to post on social media? Well, here is, again, if you don't have a tablet, if you don't have an iPad, because all of these apps, at least in the iOS world, the iPhone and iPad world, an iPhone app is going to work on an iPad. So you could use your tablet to post. But now you can post from all major social media networks from your computer. Again, Facebook and Twitter existed before the smartphone era. And so their platforms are already designed to do this. And now Instagram has even started rolling out a feature that will allow you to post content from your computer. And this is rolling out to users. It's been rolling out since June, I believe, and it's going to be widely available to all users soon if you haven't seen this feature yet. So I actually threw a link to an article from, I believe it's 9to5Mac in the notes. Check that out to learn a little bit more about this feature. But the point is that you can use your desktop web browser or a tablet to post content. You say, well, I want to be able to post in the moment. I took this picture of my kid and now I want to post it. Okay, well, actually, let's rewind it a little bit back to the last challenge. Remember, the point is to enjoy the moment. So this is going to really help us not to get distracted by living in the moment by the desire to post on social media. And so what this is going to do is make you more intentional about what you post. I still remember the days going back to Facebook when it only existed in the form of a computer or using it on a computer. I still remember the days when you would take pictures on a digital camera, you would transfer those pictures to your computer, and then you would upload them to Facebook. What this caused is for us to be really intentional about what we post. We weren't just posting content on a whim. We were maybe getting to the end of our day, the end of our week, reflecting on some of the moments we had, the memories we made, looking up if we happen to have taken pictures or videos, and then sharing it. And this is, I believe, again, really valuable in helping you live on the moment, helping you be intentional about what you post. And really, if we're honest, it could save you from posting something really dumb or something that could be really hurtful. How many times have you heard of either yourself or somebody else has posted something, if you will, in the moment, in the wrong kind of moment, out of anger, out of frustration? And they really wound up making themselves look really harsh, really mean, or maybe just outright stupid. You know, I don't like to get particularly political as part of our show's content. However, I think it's a great illustration that a lot of political pundits believe that Donald Trump would have had a much better chance of being reelected if he had been more cautious about what he posted on social media. We all know and we all remember, us here in America and really around the world, all of the, quite honestly, sometimes idiocracy that came from the @RealDonaldTrump Twitter account. May it rest in peace. And I think that we all would agree that if he had been more careful about Twitter, if he had watched his rhetoric in that way, he may still be president. Whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, that remains to be seen. That's up to you. What I'm saying and what I'm illustrating is that when you can't post in the moment, it actually helps you be more intentional and wiser in what you do post. Now, I'm going to throw in this little bonus thought here. All right. If you're saying, well, man, you're telling me to get rid of all this stuff off my phone. Man, that's a lot. What am I going to do? You know, how am I going to consume the content? Well, this is a bonus thought because I definitely want to talk more about this in a future episode. But consider audio consumption. Okay. So this is things like, obviously music is the one that's most obvious, and that should be positive music that actually encourages you, doesn't make you sad and want to, you know, not live anymore. But also things like podcasts and audiobooks. These are great. These work great on your phone and are really great ways to educate yourself, and to learn new things, to be inspired, to even be entertained. And again, we're going to talk more about that in a future episode, but I did want to throw that out there. If you say, well, I'm getting rid of this stuff, what should I replace it with? Because one of the principles that I do believe in and we do teach around here is that replacing is better than just removing. So if you want to say, okay, I'm going to get rid of these social media apps, what do I replace it with? Well, look into something like this. Maybe get a podcast app, start listening to some podcasts, subscribe to this one if you haven't yet. Our audio podcast, honestly, check it out. I would love for you to subscribe there. But beyond that, there's so many podcasts, millions of podcasts out there. And then audiobooks. Audiobooks are a great way to read. If you say, I'm not a great reader, audiobooks are a great way to become a reader, even if they think us audiobook people are cheating. I don't care. I'm still learning the content. So that part's free. That's a bonus, just like the rest of this episode is free. Well, what's the point of all this? You say, okay, so what is the big deal? You're making this big deal over whatever. This is the world we live in now. Everyone else has social media and they're all using it from your phones. Yeah. And everyone else is addicted to their phone and can't seem to stop staring down at it constantly. I mean, I doubt you could even pry a phone out of some of these people's dead hands in the event that they, died with their phone in their hand. I mean, it's that crazy. People are just addicted to their devices. They love looking at their screens. Now, the financial expert Dave Ramsey, everybody knows who Dave Ramsey is. He's the finance guy. He says in regards to your personal finance that normal is broke. And so therefore you should be weird. If you had to act like everyone else, then why would you expect your results and the way that your outcomes in your life were to be any different from everyone else? Normal, in the case of money, is broke. It's going into debt constantly. It's spending money that you don't have and trying to keep up with the Joneses and whatever. It's not really a financially wise way to live. Now, this isn't a financial show at all. But when it comes to your use of media and technology, I would say that to be normal is to be an addict. I believe screen time is the number one addiction in the world. It's hard to quantify this. It's hard to find the statistics on all of this. There is some data out there, but really, from what I observe and what you observe in just day-to-day life, screen time, it seems to be the number one addiction in the world. More than drugs or alcohol or something like caffeine or sugar. Screens seem to be the most common addiction, at least here in our Western world and in our modern society. Now, understand that by me giving this challenge, it actually does nothing to help me, and it could potentially even hurt me, because I publish each of these episodes to social media because I want to use this tool and as many outlets as possible to get this content out. But so that means that if you delete Facebook from your phone, I'm fully aware that it may mean that you see less of me and less of this show. But you know what? I would much rather you get control of your screen time and actually enjoy the reality of this world around us than for me to just get a few more views or likes on my episodes. Again, this is why I encourage you to check out the audio version of our podcast. You say, I need some time away from Facebook, but I like this content. Well, that's why we're not just available on Facebook and YouTube. If you want to break free of watching, check out our audio content. And like I said, I'm going to do more about podcast and audio content in the future. And if you're looking for where to subscribe, just check out the show notes or head over there to mustincrease.com/cc. Well, you say, here's my last question. What am I going to do without all these apps on my phone? I have become addicted. Maybe you're being honest. I have become addicted. I love looking at my phone. It's in my hand all the time. My screen time numbers are through the roof. Well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to enjoy your life. You're going to take back your time with your kids, with your family, with those you love. You're actually going to discover freedom. You're going to discover liberty and freedom from the Twitter mob, from the endless scrolling on Instagram, from the constant feed of bad news and just really quite upsetting and disgruntling things to read and watch. Look, I'm all for phones and technology. I think I've made that really clear. In fact, again, I have an entire business, and in this case, this particular show, committed to the idea of using technology because I do believe that it's a powerful tool with a lot of potential. Unfortunately, most people have allowed their screens to control them rather than actually them controlling their screens. Our society has become addicted. We are mindless drones who not only are in a constant state of media consumption, but we've also allowed this media to do our thinking for us, which for many means blindly following whatever the little screen in their pocket tells them to do. Now, imagine with me how different our world would be if we were not constantly looking at a screen. In fact, there's not a lot of imagining you have to do. For a lot of you, it's just remembering. I remember a time before smartphones. I remember really throughout almost until I was graduated high school, smartphones wasn't really a thing, or at least a popular thing. Do you remember that world? And if you don't remember it, can you imagine it with me? A world where instead of looking down, we're looking up, we're talking to each other. Think of how much better our relationships might be if we actually went back to making authentic personal connections rather than just relying on these meaningless virtual friendships for our relationships. I'm a huge fan. I can't say it enough. I'm a huge fan of the power of connection. But in order to have power over the connection, I have to remove the connection's power over me. Let's take another step towards breaking this addiction. And here's where it gets really practical. I can understand how it may seem overwhelming and daunting to delete every app that I mentioned from your phone. So let's just start small, okay? We're going to pick one, or if you're really ambitious, 2 apps that have a strong hold on you. And just delete those for, at a minimum, 1 week. So if it's Instagram, delete the Instagram app. You can keep your account, but delete the app from your phone. TikTok, definitely delete it. Man, you can really go down some deep, dark TikTok holes for hours and hours at a time if you're not careful. So I would nominate that as a prime candidate as one to delete from your phone. If it's Netflix or YouTube, delete it. Just pick 1 or 2 and commit to keeping it deleted from your phone for just a week, at least that 1 week, and just see what kind of difference it makes in your life. Because here's the thing, and that's what you may have figured out about these challenges. Most of them, if not all of them, are really not just a one-time decision, but an ongoing commitment. It's almost like a stair-stepping, gradual progression to slowly, gradually break you free from the addiction of your phone, from the addiction of screen time. Look, I want to commend you. If you've made it this far and you haven't completely turned off this episode yet, then I know this about you. You are actually honest and saying, yeah, screen time is an issue with society and particularly an issue with me. And you're saying, I actually want to do something about it. So let's do it. Let's just pick a couple of these apps. Let's delete them and make that 1 week commitment. I'll check in with you next week and I will see how you are doing. Overall, let's take back control. Let's take back control of our screens and stop letting our screens control us. Let's break that addiction. Well, thanks again for joining us for this episode. And again, I do hope that you'll subscribe, that you will share this episode in particular. If you believe in this message, if you say, yeah, this was hard to hear, but I actually think it was helpful, it's helpful for me, and I know it'll be helpful for others. I mean, look, who can you think of that isn't spending countless hours on their phone looking down all the time? I mean, there's very few people that actually aren't in that category. So it would really mean a lot if you would share this, and it might be super helpful to someone you know. And if you really want to just go the extra mile, then take a moment to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. I've actually included a link in the show notes and description so that if you're on your mobile phone, even if you don't use Apple Podcasts to listen, you can actually still click that link and go leave us a 5-star review and maybe even just a 5-star rating, and then maybe just give us a quick review. Tell us what you like about the show, that really helps this content get seen, and the audio podcast in particular get seen and heard by more listeners out there. And I want to challenge you, as always, have a part in using the power of connection to increase truth and inspire hope in the lives of others. Find something that you believe in and get behind it. If you believe in what we talked about today, all you got to do to get behind it is to simply share it or like it or both. But whatever it is, get behind what you believe in. Why? Well, because you're going to find that it is so much better and more fulfilling to be a creative contributor than it is just to be a mindless, constant consumer. I'll see you next time right here on Connection Culture.